What is going on? A to Z Sports, Sam Phelan, Easton Freeze here with you live on a Tuesday morning. Going to have a great show here this morning for you as we get set to talk a little bit more about Cam Ward and the Titans in the 2025 NFL Draft. Easton has done the great work to come up and point out what is a very intriguing NFL draft trend. We will take a look at the trend in years past, figure out if we think the Titans will or should continue in line and fall in line with, the history of the NFL draft, or if should they pave their own path as they look to sort of turn things around after a 3-14 season. We, after that, we're going to go ahead and look at the top 30 visits again. There have been some updates to the Titans list of top 30 visits, reading a little bit into that and what I would say has been a surprise as far as the players the Titans are looking into in the 2025 NFL draft. So a lot to get to this morning. We'll wrap it up with Throw and Shade. Going to be a great show. Easton, tell the folks what to do.
Yeah, good morning, Sam. Good morning to everybody that's with us in the chat this morning. Raz out of the gate. Please no Vol talk today. Listen, don't you worry. No Vol talk today. We tripled our quota of Vols talk yesterday for the week. So we're
Sam's driving the show today. I can assure you there will be no Vol talk. And if it is, it will be me trolling
and poking fun. Right.
I do have to give credit. Like, let's give some credit where credit's due off the rip. I believe it was Big Ten Jeff, who has good shade today, started my show with Austin on Friday trolling about Nico. And he was in the comments saying, "Oh, Nico's leaving Tennessee." And Austin was despondent in the moment, just like was saying, "No, Jeff doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah." About 2 hours later, Nico's not at practice, and it was bedlam for all of the Tennessee. So Jeff was ahead of it and early, and it was kind of funny to watch how quickly the Tennessee folks went from, "Hey, I'm not worried," to
right,
very worried in a short period of time,
and then no longer worried. You know what? Didn't need him in the first place.
Didn't want him.
Yeah, actually, kind of a bum now that you mentioned it.
You remember that Ohio State game? He was horrible.
Right. Exactly. It's a mess is all I'll say about that. It's a mess. And it is yet another day that I am thanking God I do not cover college sports because it is it's messy.
Yeah.
It is messy. All right. So we got a great show for you guys today. We're talking NFL. We got NFL draft stuff to talk about. We got Titans draft stuff to talk about. And we want to dive into all of it. A couple of trends we're going to dive into today. One that the Titans could break and one that the Titans are currently engaging in. What does it tell us about their draft plans? A lot to discuss, but first, got to make sure you like the show on Facebook, on YouTube. Hit that like button for us. Hit the little thumbs up. It is very helpful to us. It is a Sam and Easton show day, which means we have a quota to hit or else we are fired. So just like the show, it's free. It's helpful to us. It allows us to, make our bosses happy. And it is the easiest way that you can be a friend of the show this morning. And then jump in the comments with Raz and Nick, see Rich, Katie, Ken, Roger, Titans, Kyle, a lot of familiar faces. Good morning to you all. Jump in there with them. Want to hear your thoughts on today's questions, today's topics. Sam, let's get it started.
All right, let's get it started and let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports, live on a Tuesday morning and every weekday morning at 8 Central Time, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show were tweeted out segment by segment on our Twitter X timeline at ATOZ Sports is where you can find us over there. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more great Titans coverage in video form and leave us a 5-star Google review to help us out on the website front. Got to thank our sponsors this morning. They make it happen for us while helping out all of you. They are Wilson County Hyundai. Make Wilson County Hyundai a part of your new car buying process in Lebanon or at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. The Bone and Joint Institute, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Boneandjointtn.org is where to go to schedule your appointment with them. And our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law, because a crash can change your life forever. And help is just a click away at bartdurham.com. Okay, Easton. Obviously, the I suppose the news cycle is a little bit, barren right now. Everybody's sort of waiting in anticipation with bated breath for the 2025 NFL draft, trying to parse through different pieces of information to get extra information. And for Titans fans, that can be a little bit hard when the number one overall pick feels like a shoo-in, and there's no mock drafts to really dive into or discuss or give the hot takes about. This time last year, we were having a Neighbors versus Alt versus a Dunze versus Latham versus
trade back, trade up.
The possibilities were endless. And right now, Cam Ward to the Titans limits our discussion.
We had our A to Z wide pre-draft game plan meeting yesterday, and it was a lot of talk about here are all the angles you can write about. Will they trade up? Will they trade down? Top 3 players of the position. And you and I are sitting there what are we going to write about on night one?
Yeah, we can't write.
We can pre-write Cam Ward, and then we can watch the rest of the draft and wait till pick 35. That's what we're doing on night one. So
yeah, I mean that's what it's going to be. It'll be interesting. We'll
get to enjoy the first round. So that means
throughout the history of the draft,
first round for the Titans fans.
Throughout the history of the draft, I have been somebody who I like to go over to the facility as soon as we wrap up our draft call, our draft show.
Mm-hmm.
Just to, it's like, oh, maybe they trade back into the first. Got to get ready for the press conference that's going to happen. All of it sort of feels like a given from the first day of how things are going to go. But given the fact that Cam Ward is going to be the pick, I think there are a few different questions that you can ask. And I think the easiest one when you're talking about a young quarterback is how you're going to support him. We have seen the Titans sort of make a concerted effort in free agency to get an offensive line in front of Cam that they feel like can protect him and keep him upright and, do that part of the job. But there is another side of that, Easton, which is the wide receiver situation. I remember talking to you on the show during free agency about how they were going to have to do something at wide receiver. And I suppose they did. They signed Van Jefferson to a 1-year deal. And I assumed that they would do something else at wide receiver. And up to this point, they have not. So the wide receiver room, care to update the folks on the current state of the wide receiver room for the Titans?
Oh boy, I would love to. So you've got Calvin Ridley, who we all know and love, and he is a starter, easy peasy. Don't worry about it. Beyond him, it is tough. Van Jefferson, of course, was a free agent addition. You've got my boy Bryce Oliver in the house, hoping to grow into the NWI role. And other than that, Mason Kinsey is still on the roster. I know that's a thing. You've got, Treylon Burks, of course, is still on the roster. You've got
to forget him.
Right. James Prochet is a guy they added who's technically a receiver.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That was while I was out, I guess they added that guy.
Yeah. Special teams add, but he does play receiver. Colton Dowell is still on the roster. Tay Martin, Jaquan Jackson. How could we forget? And then Stanley Morgan, who sounds like a law firm, not a football player.
How many guys on that list that you just gave me are on the 53 week 1?
3. Ridley, Jefferson, Oliver are the only ones that I'm pretty sure are on
that. You're confident, right? Like maybe Prochet makes it. Maybe Prochet can make it. Maybe.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Excuse me, Prochet again on a technicality. He's not making it as a receiver,
right? But he's making the team, and he's.
Oh, there's 4. Okay, that's fine. There's 4. So they need a pair of additions at least. I mean, maybe there's a sad timeline that Burks is on the roster, but I don't see it at all. So yeah, that's
where we're at.
3 or 4.
And so the reason I bring that up, right, is because and Patrick Bird came in with a comment at 35 for sure, talking about where the Titans are potentially going to address the receiver situation.
Well,
maybe it's a little bit further down the board than that.
I wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket. I've
right.
been trying to get people to pump the brakes on this. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is an interesting thing because I would have thought that makes some sense. And then you came out, you kind of pointed out this NFL draft trend that has existed over the last 5 or so years.
Mhm.
The last 5 teams to select the top quarterback in the draft have also taken a big swing at wide receiver. This is from your article on A to Z Sports. The Bears took Caleb Williams last year, and of course, Rome Odunze with the 9th overall pick to give Caleb another weapon. They already had DJ Moore in that room.
Mhm.
Bryce Young, 1st overall. Jonathan Mingo, 2nd round. They go quarterback, wide receiver back to back for Carolina. Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, quarterback, wide receiver, 1st and 2nd. The Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence, handed a bag to Christian Kirk in the free agent market, which was an eye-popping contract at the time for a guy like Christian
Made him
Kirk.
the highest paid receiver in the league.
Yeah, and the Bengals go Joe Burrow, and then they go ahead and grab T. Higgins in the 2nd round of the draft. So these teams grabbing a quarterback in round 1 and following it up with a wide receiver in round 2, like very, very popular trend.
Yeah.
3 of the 5 teams here, that we'll get to that later. 3 of the 5 teams here did that 1st round, 2nd round, and the Bears essentially did it as well. They just happened to have 2 picks in the 1st round, so they were able to do it up to a little bit of a higher standard. And so it got me thinking, are the Titans the next team to continue this trend with Calvin Ridley on the roster and a clear need at wide receiver? 35 overall. Is that where the Titans have wide receiver penciled in, or could they potentially sort of forge their own path and, go off the board a little bit for what they do at wide receiver?
Yeah, we were talking about this on a show last week. This idea that I think that people are, again, putting too many of their eggs in the receiver basket at 35 because I tweeted this. It's like, give a mouse the 1st overall quarterback and watch how quickly they convince themselves they just got to have that cookie, and that cookie is a receiver next. It makes sense that you get a new quarterback that you draft very, very highly. I think our natural desire as sports fans is to give that guy as many cool weapons as possible to make him cooler and better.
And a young weapon to grow with, right? I think there's something to that. Like, you can be like, oh, well, you have Calvin Ridley. You have a fun guy to grow. But, like, the idea of, and again, everybody knows my, like, Bears fandom, right? But, like, I was super guilty of that with the Bears last year. Just the idea of saying Caleb and Rome for 5 years together, that they're playing together for, like, that's so fun. It's so exciting. It gets you really fired up. But that might not always be the best decision. I mean, we can look at a couple of those, like Jonathan Mingo wasn't a good pick in the 2nd round for Carolina. But they were chasing that cookie.
Dallas Cowboys legend Jonathan Mingo. Yeah, it's exactly right. And it is generally a decent idea to sync those timelines. So I get it. I do. And it's Big Ten Jeff says they effing need receivers, Easton. I'm not saying they don't, and I'm not saying they won't take one at 35. I'm just saying, flash backward to a month or 2 months ago, we all understood before it was clear that Cam was necessarily the pick, and before we were this tilted on receiver, which I think that's another, just the closer you get to the draft, the sexier the skill players get in our minds. I think it becomes more fun to talk about the skill players. We all kind of were on the same page about how, hey, this is a really great defensive line class, and hey, the Titans really need edge, and they need receiver really bad too, but they at least have Calvin Ridley, and they don't necessarily have anybody at edge right now. And the odds are the best player at 35 may be the best edge that fell out of the 1st round. That would probably be a 1st rounder in another lesser class. And so I'm not saying that they won't take receiver. I'm just saying right now, I think it's probably a 50-50 proposition. They take receiver, well, maybe 33, receiver, edge, or trade out of 35. Like, I still think it's very much up in the air. And I was talking to somebody in the Titans building last week on Friday, and they were asking me, like, why is everybody so, we were talking about this, why is everybody so in love with Luther Burden or Emeka Egbuka at 35? They're like, first of all, I'm not sure those guys are going to be there. But second of all, why are we so sure we're taking a receiver at 35? What's this fan base's obsession receiver. I'm like, well,
So
first of all, because receivers are fun. Second of all, because of what we've been talking about, we're inclined to want to give a talented player to a rookie. And my point to that person in the building was, they were like, fans are like, they get so in love with receivers, huh? And I was like, well, teams do too. And that's what led to this article. So I'm like, you guys do the same thing. Look at the last 5 years. Teams fall into this for better or for worse. It's kind of everybody's nature to do this.
Well, and I will say too, like, what is the big obsession with a Gabuka or Luther Burden? Well, I think the fact that they might not be there is what's exciting about them. The fact that you could be sitting here as a Titans fan with potentially what we have thought forever in Burden was a first round caliber wide receiver. Some thought a top 10 wide receiver, and his draft stock has started to fall all the way now to like maybe he's back into the first round. Maybe he sneaks into day 2. And if he gets to day 2 and he gets to the Titans at 35, I think it's totally reasonable to be gung-ho about this guy that has a huge upside at a position of need, and the idea of pairing him with Cam Ward. I think that's all really exciting stuff. Mm-hmm. And so if he is there, right, like I don't blame anybody that's super fired up about Luther Burden or Egmeka Egbuka.
No, me neither. And again, I know with at least one of those guys, if he's there at 35, there are going to be multiple. I don't know everybody's opinion in the draft room, but there will be multiple people that I know will be in the draft room who will be throwing themselves across the table, demanding that, that guy's the pick, because these are exciting players. I'm just saying that the sober reality of it all is that teams have their boards and they have them for every position. And when they get to 35, the Titans are going to be considering all of their options. And if they have an edge or 2 or 3 edges above their best receiver, they're gonna take one of those edge guys, or they're gonna trade the pick. Like, that's just the way that these teams operate. They're not gonna say, well, through our grading process of watching these guys, we had a clear better grade on these 3 edge players, but receiver sure is fun, so let's go for the receiver. That's not. I mean, that happens with bad teams, I suppose, and when owners get involved and stuff like that. But a good team following their process is not going to do that.
Yeah.
That being said, the trend makes it sound like they're going to, right?
Well, Adrian makes a decent point here too. Like, you can get quality receivers in round 4, he says. So you take edge at 35. I do think, like, pound for pound, you're more likely to get a high impact player at receiver later in the draft than you are to get a high impact edge rusher later in the draft. Edge is similar to like offensive tackle to me, where you can
That's statistically true.
You can get a serviceable one maybe in round 4, but you're not going to get a real impact player in round 4. And then, we see all the time that, schematically, if you find a good fit for your offense in round 4, like, receivers can thrive regardless of where they're drafted. So, statistically true, as Adrian says. But really, Easton, the reason we bring up this trend, the reason that we show you what teams have done in the past, is because I want to gauge the chat and your opinion for our first question today. So here it is. Should the Titans continue the trend of pairing the top QB with a big swing at wide receiver? Now let's define what big swing too, right? Like, given where they're at in free agency, a big swing is them drafting a wide receiver at 35. It's taking a chance and a risk, I think, on a wide receiver. No?
Well, to me, it's a day 2 pick. Spending a day 2 pick. And right now they only have one, obviously. But I think that if they trade back and the first of their 2 picks they get is a receiver, even if they pick a receiver in the 60s or the 70s.
To me that's their second pick. Okay. Has to be a receiver. To me, a big swing, right? If you're drafting a guy at 75 or 85,
that's fine.
Me, that's not a huge swing. It's you're investing something, but it's not like versus 35, like, that's a really, really valuable pick. So should the Titans continue this trend of pairing a top QB with a big swing at wide receiver? Let us know what you think in the chat. And while you guys do that, I'm going to tell you all about our friends over at the Bone and Joint Institute. They're the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. The Bone and Joint Institute is located in Franklin. And whenever you get hurt in life, you have to know who you can trust, and you can trust them over at the Bone and Joint Institute. Over a dozen specialists to help you through any type of injury in a state-of-the-art rehab facility, all under one roof for maximum convenience. That's clinic, imaging, testing, surgery, rehab. It's all there in Franklin. One-stop shop for everything that you need. Schedule your appointment with the Bone and Joint Institute by going to boneandjointtn.org. That's boneandjointtn.org.
Help us out. Make sure that you're liking the show. Make sure that you're leaving us a 5-star Google review. It's the easiest way to be a friend of the show, and it's free. So go to Google, search A to Z Sports on the business entity there. You can hit the review button and hit that 5th star there on the right to leave us a 5-star review. And then you can say whatever you'd like. Feedback is a gift. If you have constructive criticism for us, we will gladly take it as long as it comes in the form of a 5-star Google review.
All right, Easton, should the Titans continue the trend of pairing the top QB with a big swing at wide receiver? I'll send you to the chat. What say our listeners this morning?
What say our listeners as I scroll back to the top here? I see a lot of yeses. I see yes from our Hoshi. I see hell yeah from Raz. Ethan says no. Orlando says yes. Steven says no. Edge rusher all the way. Eric says no. Okay, some more no's than initially thought. Corey says 100% draft a receiver with a quarterback. Build offense first. Darius says 100% specifically if Egbuka or Burden are there. Raz says yes in a trade back. Top tier says yes. Danny says yes. Kyle says as long as they love the guy like they do Cam, don't just draft one because he's a receiver. Always good advice.
Good.
Daniel says no, they should go the Washington route and surround him with a lot of quality, but not big swing receivers. So Daniel wants a wide receiver room by committee, which is certainly on the board for the Titans right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what? Just kind of eyeballing the answers as I scroll down, a lot more yeses, a handful more no's. I'd say it's a 60-40, 65-35 split that the folks say, yes, the Titans should continue the trend to take a receiver with their second pick in the draft. Sam, what say you?
Maybe this is cheating. Let me know if you think this is cheating.
It probably is.
My answer is going to be, and a couple people in the chat were on it, like it's contingent for me. Emeka Egbuka is not going to be there. I think he's going to go in the first round.
Can we stop talking about it?
Like this,
he's a top 25 player all day long. What are we talking about?
I think he goes 20th overall, and it's not relatively close.
Yep.
My gut says Burden goes in the first round as well. I would just be surprised to see every year more receivers go in the first round than we think are going to go in the first round.
I know, and I'm with you. I've just had my mind changed on Burden in particular. But I think you're right that we'll see more receivers in the first round than we expect.
But, I mean, it's McMillan. Golden's going to go. Egbuka's going to go. I think that next guy is Luther Burden. I don't see somebody going for like Betch or a Umanor or Isaiah Bond in the first round. So
not to spoil an upcoming article and probably show topic, but I think one of the Iowa State boys is the sneaky receiver that gets into the first round.
Well, I've been on both the Iowa State boys, and I do this to myself every year. I did it with Quinyon Mitchell last year. I go to the Senior Bowl. I find a guy who's projected to go in the third round that I'm just like absolutely buzzing and in love with. And I tell everybody who will listen how great those guys are. And I do a show at the Senior Bowl talking about how great those guys are. And then everybody seems to agree. And then they go in the first round. And then I'm disappointed because they don't actually make it to the Titans. Right. That's what happened with Quinyon Mitchell last year and could obviously happen with Jalen Knoll or
Jaden
Higgins this year. I don't think Burden gets to them. If he does, I take him. And if not, I am not drafting a wide receiver. Like my opinion on it is pretty black and white, where if it's one of those top 4 guys at 35, absolutely sign me up for pairing Cam Ward with one of those wide receivers for the next 5 years. Especially because I think you're right. Like there's talented edge rushers in the draft at 35. I don't think there's anybody that's going to be sitting at 35 that blows me away as far as like edge talent is concerned. I think that like people in that second and third tier of edge are sort of Sophie's choice in a way. And you could go either way. So I like, if you can get into that first tier before the significant drop off in my eyes of wide receiver, I love the idea of doing that for the Titans, but I'm not drafting Jaden Higgins or Jalen Noel at 35. I'm not drafting Trey Harris at 35 or a Humanor at 35 or Betch at 35. I'm not interested in that. I'd much rather trade down or take an edge if that's where you're at. But I think if you have a chance to get the value of Burden, I'm all over that.
My answer is that they probably should not. I'm not going to be. I'm more flexible on the potential receivers that could go at 35 than it sounds like you are. I won't be overly upset if they do go for one of the Iowa State boys, specifically Noel, who I'm higher on than Higgins, at 35. I think it will be an interesting decision given who else is likely to be there on the board at edge at that position. But I look at kind of what you were saying, the potential receivers and the potential edge players, and the difference, the fundamental difference for me is that assuming the top 4 wide receivers aren't there at 35, if you do take a receiver, you're looking at a lot of guys that have a lot more questions to me than with the edge players. Say that the top 4, top 5. This will load for me. Yeah, so like Carter and Walker, Stewart, Williams, Green are all gone. So the top 5 guys that we think are first round picks. You're looking at a group of players that, for me, the more I have watched them and studied them, I'm honestly at the point where this next tier, which is like 8 or 9 guys, I think that they are all going to be good NFL players besides literally one, and that's Jack Sawyer.
Sure.
For me, James Pierce, Donovan Nezaraku, Nick Scorton, Landon Jackson, JTT, Princely, Umamielen, Braden Switson, Jordan Birch, Oladejo, Josiah Stewart, even the next 10 guys, I think, are all going to be useful NFL players. So I think they're going to be stars, probably not. And just playing the odds, 1 or 2 of them may be like true ones, and it's luck of the draw there. But I think that they all are perfectly acceptable picks to me. I love that.
I like Donovan Ezraku a lot. I don't think he makes it to 35. So that's another example, right? Of where in the edge, of course, this is a difficult conversation to have when this is obviously a factor, but it's where in the receivers are you at when 35 comes around? Where in the edge rushers are you at? If Pierce and Ezraku, but if you showed me right now James Pierce or Luther Burden, I'm taking Luther Burden 10 times out of 10.
Here's the thing, though, Sam, and I was talking on a different recording for a later video here on the A to Z Sports YouTube channel about this yesterday. We're at the point in the process where it's a numbers game, and we really have to. I think we all need to. And I'm writing an article on this right now. We'll probably bring this up on the show here this week about guys that are. I think we all have in our head. I think the best way to put it is what I saw Daniel Jeremiah tweet the other day, and Daniel Jeremiah said, "Guys, I got great news. I just got off the phone with a bunch of agents. They're going to be 64 first-round picks this year. Can you believe it? We all have in our head guys that are somewhere from lock first rounders to probably first rounders to maybe first rounders. And that list for me is 40 players long, and 8 of them can't be, right? And 5 of them have to be there for the Titans at 35 mathematically. So there are some interesting things if we end up getting 3 running backs in the first round, which I think is a bigger possibility than folks think. If we end up getting more than 2 quarterbacks in the first round, which seems like maybe a bigger thing, maybe bigger possibility than folks want to think. If we end up getting a run on receivers or a run on edge where there's an outsized number of those guys, it's going to push other positions, other players down the board. So and this is the case always at 33 and 34 and 35 every single year. So what makes the top second round so interesting is that there is always 3 to 5 players who everyone kind of thought, wow, I'm a little surprised they didn't go in the first round, who were there at the top of day 2. And the 20-ish hours between the end of the first round and the beginning of the second round is this frenzy of us writing and the Titans and NFL teams making phone calls. And it's mad dash to figure out, okay, regroup, who wants to trade up, who wants to trade down, who wants to come get these guys, who's the best player of it. It's this fun scramble to figure out what the game plan is to get the perceived last group of potential first round grades.
Well, it's interesting too. These are two positions that I think teams make mistakes at all the time because of just the premium that's placed on them, and the idea to kind of like you said, but not drop down a tier. Look at the 2024 NFL draft, and there is a gap from pick 27 all the way down to pick 56, a gap of edge rushers going, because there is sort of the idea that, a lot of those second round defensive ends, those second round edge rushers like Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson, right? Like those guys all went pretty early in the first round. And then there was sort of a drop down until Marshawn Nealand, who is the next guy to come off of the board, where teams just were like, okay, well, all of the first round grade edge rushers are gone, or borderline first round grade edge rushers are gone. So we're going to look at a different position. And last year, wide receiver was as interesting as it's ever been, because I think a lot of teams tried to force the wide receiver position at that back end of round one, beginning of round two phase. Between picks 28 and 37, we got 6 wide receivers drafted between 28 and 37. Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk. How many of those actually worked out? 2?
I mean, even the ones that worked out. I would say everybody in that group is going into
McConkey's the home run.
Right. That's a good point. Sorry, I didn't hear you say McConkey. He's the only one that doesn't have any questions going into year 2. Everyone else has questions, at least.
And so you end up with like teams taking first round picks on Worthy and Pearsall and Legette and Coleman and McConkey. And meanwhile, a couple picks later in the first round, you've got Cooper DeJean, Braden Fisk, Johnny Newton, like
T'Vondre Sweat. Hello.
So, like, yeah, I mean, I don't think Sweat's on the same tier as some of those other guys, but like, I mean, regardless, still really.
What?
Fisk
is the only guy that you could argue is better than him after year 1.
Cooper DeJean.
Oh, I think just the defensive tackle.
Oh no, sorry, I was listing defensive players, right? That are
DeJean and Fisk. That's fine. Yeah.
But high impact, even Sweat, right? If you're going down Sweat, Johnny Newton, like high impact defensive players in year 1, and wide receivers that have a lot of question marks that were passed up on because teams were trying to force the wide receiver issue. Like we see this over and over and over again.
We do.
So what's your answer? You haven't answered the question.
No, I did. I said they probably shouldn't continue the trend. They probably
should go edge.
I am still inclined to prioritize finding a way to have a second pick in day 2 above all. And in my latest mock draft, which you can check out at a2zsports.com right now, I found, I think there's more than one way to do that besides trade down from 35, but trade down from 35 is definitely the most straightforward, most simple, most likely way to do that. And so I think that they are still, I mean, like, again, we've talked about this on the show. Look at the 30 visits they're conducting. They are spending a lot of time and energy on players that on the big board, the consensus big board, are slated to go from pick 50 to 90, which, that's because they're at least strongly thinking, hey, we very well may have a pick in that range. Let's make sure we've done our homework on that. And we just know from them having said it out loud, we would love to add another top 100 pick. So I am still inclined to say trade back. But if you told me they have to stay at 35 or they choose to stay at 35, I think that they are more likely to have a better edge available to them than a receiver, just playing the odds.
I would agree with that. Raz says Kyle Williams and Jalen Royals would be tough with Cam. Love both the players. I'm number 1 Jalen Royals guy in this class. But again, like I saw a mock draft yesterday that had the Titans taking Kyle Williams at 35. I'm good. Like I don't need Kyle Williams at 35. I like the player. I think it helps Cam. That to me is where you start to go, like you start to lose the value train. You start to force the position. And that's why like my answer, right, is if there is Luther Burden, I'm all over it. It's going to be hard for you to find an edge rusher that I would take over Luther Burden. I'm not sure that you can find one that's realistic to be there at 35. I like Luther Burden, but I'm not taking any of those other next tier guys and doing what the 2024 NFL draft did, where we're forcing Jalen Polk at the beginning of round 2 because we simply think we need a receiver for Drake May, and we're just going to draft him because we need to pair a young wide receiver with our young quarterback. That's when you lose the value with other defensive players on the board.
I hear you. I totally hear you. With Kyle Williams in particular, I would kind of sort of be okay with it at 35. Here's the deal, folks. Kyle Williams he's a second round pick. Like that's happening. Whether you are there yet or not, it's happening. He's going to be a second round pick. And 35 would be very high second round pick. And so I don't quite know about that, but he is the player. He is the riser of this class. He is the guy who has gone from the 120s to probably going to be picked in the 40s or 50s.
Like 35, are you taking Kyle Williams or Jalen Knoll? Who would you rather?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm taking Knoll. I'm just saying
too.
Williams is in that tier of guys that I wouldn't, if they planted their flag on the guy, I would at least get it. But do I think he's going to be the best player available to them at 35? No, I do not.
Totally. Yeah. This is, I know it's kind of unfortunate because it's day 2. But this is where the intrigue comes for the Titans in the draft. The curse of having that number 1 pick is it's kind of like, all right, little intrigue on day 1. But I think if you're a Titans fan, you're going to turn on the NFL draft. You'll turn on, obviously, at the beginning. You want to watch Cam Ward walk on the stage, do his interviews, hear people talk about him. Maybe you watch the first 5-6 picks. Take a break. Go hit a workout. Go do something else
in the middle of the draft. Oh, y'all aren't.
Yeah. Oh, it takes forever.
Casuals.
No,
y'all aren't built for this.
You're gonna need the hour and a half break, and I'll tell you right now. I bet you this is what we do here at A to Z Sports. Okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna peace out from our live stream after pick 5. After we've talked a lot about Cam Ward and seen how the beginning of the draft shakes out. And then go back to your TV, get back to your TV right around like pick 21, 22, and settle in for the final 10 picks of the first round.
Casual.
And watch and hope and find those names. Find that Luther Burden. Find the Emeka Egbuka. Find Donovan Ezeraku. Find a couple of those names that you want for the Titans at 35, and then just hope the commissioner doesn't say them. I think that's the way to watch the draft if you're a Titans fan this year.
Yeah, if you're actually a dog and you're built for the NFL, you'll sit and watch the full first round because it's awesome.
It is not awesome.
It is super awesome, actually, is the thing about it.
Oh, man. It's just too long. It's too long. They need to not do so much time between picks. It's absolutely absurd that they give these teams 15 minutes or whatever it is.
10.
They give them 10 minutes to pick and the annoying thing is the teams use the 10 minutes, which is infuriating. Like
they need all 10.
No, not when you've been studying for 6 months. You don't like.
Hey, here's something we haven't talked about. Here's something we haven't talked about. Over under how much time the Titans use on one. They use in all 10?
I mean, I think they use about 2 minutes and then submit it.
I think the Bears used like a lot of time last year, didn't they? I think they ran that thing.
Yeah,
down.
but that was also like Ryan Poles wanted to submit it right away, and he said that they told him he had to wait. So maybe the league will tell the Titans they have to wait. That's what I'm saying.
I think we're going to
Vrabel. I'll say this: if Brian Callahan was not the coach and Vrabel was the coach, he's using 9 minutes and 59 seconds. And like you're going to be like, what's going on? What's taking so long in Tennessee? He's trolling. If Vrabel was still the coach, Vrabel probably will do that over in New England.
He very well may. Yeah.
So that is the thing that pisses me off about the draft every year is I'm like, even at number 2, I'm like, you're telling me the Browns don't know what they're going to do at number 2 already? Like they know.
It's a background show, though. You're not sitting there dialed in for 3 hours.
The background on Cam Ward for 4 months. Every time you turn on NFL Network,
but there's 32 other players. There's 32 other players.
Right. No, when you get a player that hasn't been getting the shine, I like hearing some of the background. That to me, I think is cool. It's cool for that reason. But So
No, I mean a
little
background
drawn
show
out.
for like in the room you are in. You have it on in the background.
Okay.
It's a
I
show
think
you
that's
throw
fine.
on that you pay attention. You hear the da na na na, and you let me lock in real quick. What's the pick? Interesting. Okay, and then you go back to your phone.
I agree
Or you
with
go back
this.
to chat with your party, or you go get a bite. But you're watching the whole thing.
Oh, Easton, that is a different scenario though. That right there, I full subscribe to. If you're going to a draft party and
Yes.
you're hanging out and you're like, I'm gonna go get a Tostito scoop and
This
hit
is
the
what I'm saying. You
guacamole
don't
tonight.
go work out in the middle of a draft.
No, I'm in. I'm
Okay,
saying
all right.
if you're sitting on your couch and all you're doing is sitting there watching the NFL, like, come on, man. We gotta do something. Have it on in the background. I
Yes.
fully agree.
Okay.
Tune in when you hear the chimes. Go talk to somebody. Go get a drink. Go get a Tostito scoop. Flip it to the damn Braves game on Bally Sports. I don't care, but you cannot sit there and stare down that 10-minute clock the whole way.
No, I get that. I'm with you. No.
All right.
Even I, sick as I may be, am not doing that. I'm sitting there scrolling Twitter between the picks.
All right. Bobby says he's guilty. I know there's people in the chat that do this. And so, oh man, I will not be, but you know what?
Sometimes you just need to dissociate and stare at your TV, man.
I respect the commitment, man. I respect the commitment. Yeah, or you can do what Nick says. Have the draft on in the background, but you pull up the A to Z Sports Draft Show and listen to us talk about the draft. And then we will do the commissioner's at the podium. Turn your attention to the draft. Come back to the show. That's a great call by Nick right there as to what to do. All right, let's move it on. One little for a brief moment here, Easton, because there's another trend that is being noticed. This time with the Titans' top 30 visits. We're going to talk about it and see what it means, if anything. What can we read into potentially the Titans' new trend? Before we do it, going to tell you all about our friends over at Bart Durham Injury Law, because you deserve to get paid. Your big truck wreck is their fight for justice, because a crash can change your life forever. And Bart Durham Injury Law is here to help, and only a phone call away. You can reach the Bart Durham team 24/7 to get legal questions answered, because again, you deserve to be paid. Their attorneys are available to meet with you whenever is most convenient, including virtually. And if you go to bartdurham.com, you can get current news, blogs, and contact or live chat. This is why they've been in business since 1975. Our guy Blair is a Marine veteran, and they're located in Capitol View, Nashville. So they're local, but they can also fight for anybody in Kentucky and Tennessee that's been in an auto accident. Bart Durham Injury Law, one click away at bartdurham.com.
We've got so much more to say, but first, make sure you have liked the show. Easiest way to help us out on this fine, what is today? Tuesday morning. Like the show, leave a 5-star Google review. These are the things that you can do to help us out this morning. Please do that for us. They're free. And as we know on a Sam and Easton show day, if we do not get enough likes, we get fired. So hit that like button.
And we're not at the threshold yet.
No, so. And yeah, folks think we're just asking blindly. No, it's on our screens right now. On the back end of this program, we see how many likes. There are 44. There's now 45 likes. That is not enough. We need more than that. So thank you very much for hitting like right now. Perfect. Thank you so much for doing that.
All right. Real quick, I saw this comment come in from William. He says, "Wait, y'all have draft shows?" Yes, we do.
Yeah, baby.
Last year, I believe, I'm trying to remember. It was me last year. I think I was with Lucas Panzica every year. I did a nice little special with Lucas last year where I was serving commissioner for you, where I was basically playing the NFL chime and announcing the picks live on the show. And I was waiting. I was sort of beating the commissioner to the podium because I was waiting for some of those tweets, some of those spoiler tweets from Adam Schefter and whatnot before announcing the pick. I don't know if we're going to do that this year, but we certainly will be sitting reacting to the draft. And then, when the Titans pick, we'll react to it. When, some other teams pick within the top 5 to 10, we'll react to it. And then we'll probably go live as well. Like I said, towards the end of the first round to react to like the last 5 or 6 picks of the first round there. That way we can lay out the groundwork for who could be available for Tennessee at 35 overall. So we'll be with you for majority of Thursday night next week for the NFL draft. It's one of the best nights of the year over at A to Z Sports. And it's a night of the year where people famously have very bad opinions and just like somebody delivers a hot take every year on the A to Z draft show that then follows them for
Is that right?
years and years and years.
What's
The
an
A to Z
example?
Sports, well, the A to Z Sports draft show, and he turned out to be correct, but is where Zach Bingham just ripped Corey Davis to shreds, and then was the infamous anti-Corey Davis guy for basically a decade. Still to this day is an anti-Corey Davis guy.
That's tough.
The biggest show in A to Z sports history is, of course, the 2022 NFL draft show. No, 2022 NFL draft show. When did that's the AJ trade, right?
For who? AJ trade was
23.
Yeah, 20. No, 22.
No, 22. Yeah, the 22 NFL draft show. The AJ trade. Reacting to it live. Sometimes, Easton, when I'm my guilty pleasure, I go back to the A to Z Sports 2022 NFL draft show, which is still on YouTube, and I just sit and I watch Austin's reaction, and it's hilarious every time. It's funny every time.
It's always good. Always hits. Always hits.
Like, it's an all-time moment watching Austin react to the 2022 NFL draft. So yes, Thursday night, William, go check that out. Easton, top 30 visits. The Titans have a trend sort of emerging. I put this together because now 5 top 30 visits reported. Cam Jackson, Omar Norman Lott, TJ Sanders, Darius Alexander, Vernon Broughton,
I believe.
Broughton. What do we notice about all 5 of those names? Defensive tackles. So the Titans, who you would think are okay at that position, Jeffrey Simmons, Devondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day is back. Keandre Coburn is still under contract. 5 defensive tackle, top 30 visits. So I guess let's get to our second question and get right into it with your opinion here, Easton. What is one word as sort of a reaction? What do you make of the Titans using 5 top 30 visits on defensive tackles?
My one word is attention. As in, you have my attention. I think that we should be reading into this because, they have spent, what is that? 1/6 of their 30 visits on defensive tackles that we know of. There are still 7 we haven't tracked down, so they could have even more than that. And that is not something you do unless you have tangible, legitimate interest in defensive tackle additions, which we can talk about the team building of here in just a minute. But I don't think we should read too much into it because I've seen folks talking about how, they spent 5 of these on defensive tackles, and I think only 1 on an edge, maybe 1 or 2 on an edge. And, what does that mean about what they're, they need edge help badly and desperately. And could they possibly take a defensive tackle at 35 instead of an edge player? I won't rule anything out. But what I will say is that it's something that I have kind of, I guess I sort of knew, but I didn't really understand it fully until this draft process and kind of talking to people behind the scenes. The way that these 30 visits work today are a little bit different than they did even 5 years ago. When COVID hit and they had to do that entire draft process, most of it digitally, and you had a lot of pro days canceled in the combine and like all these things. They zoomed with everyone, right? And that was kind of the Wild West that year because everything was chaos. They just said, just zoom with whoever. Don't care. No rules. Just zoom with these guys. And they've since put a lot of rules and standards and regulations on them. But something that I don't think the average fan knows is that teams can only they can only bring in and do the whole tour of the facility, talk to everybody in person thing with 30 guys each year. And of course you have, I think 48 or something like that. You can do 18 minutes with like 48-ish players at the combine. And you can travel to people's pro days and talk with them then as well. And you can schedule some private workouts if you want to. But that also involves travel and it's a lot of effort. But you can Zoom with as many players as you want still. Infinite. You can Zoom with all 400 players on your board if you want to. And you can do it for up to 1 hour with each guy each week, up to 3 times. So you can do an hour for 3 straight weeks with a player if you want. And you can do that with as many players as you want. And so these teams like I was talking to somebody in the building, like, what are the what are like the assistant coaches up to? Like, what's Tyke Tolbert up to right now? And it's like Zoom all day, every day. It's all these guys are doing is talking to guys on Zoom and taking notes and going over the film with the guys after they talk to them and all these things. So the 30 visits matter, and they're not spent willy-nilly. They are spent on the guys that have the biggest question marks. But that's the key, is the guys that have the biggest question. And they are certainly all going to be players that you're considering drafting that you bring in on 30 visits. That I'm not saying that you bring in guys that you have no interest in. Obviously you don't. But they are the guys that you want to, maybe concern is the wrong word, but you have the most questions about something, whether it's the way that they play or it's some character, or you're just trying to like feel their vibe out. Like, is this guy like, does he pass the vibe check in terms of being a guy that we think can be a good fit on this team and in this locker room? And so that's what this is. And I know of a handful of players the Titans have ranked very, like, newsflash, the Titans really like Emeka Egbuka because everybody likes Emeka Egbuka. You know what they're not doing? Bringing him on a 30 visit. They are bringing in Luther Burden, which I reported last week. That's not because they like Luther more. It's because they met with Emeka at the combine for 18 minutes, realized, oh, this guy's a Boy Scout. He's perfect. And they're good. They're like, we'll just watch the tape. We talked to him. We're good. Like we our evaluation is set. We don't have any more questions about this guy. So I think that while it is clear evidence that they want another defensive tackle, which I do want to talk about here in a minute. Why would they want that? Like what's the team building philosophy behind that? I think that's interesting. I do think that we shouldn't read into, well, it's like they want defensive tackle more than anything else. They think it's the most important thing besides quarterback. I don't know about that. I think it could just as easily mean they just have a lot of questions about these guys. These guys have character or on-field concerns that they want to get to the bottom of, and they're interested in drafting one, but they want to make sure they get one that they can trust.
I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you said. I'm going to do the one word that I think is the most common among the chat, because it is what comes to mind for me. And I really quickly, I think we can have this conversation, Easton. My one word is Jeff, said with that exact inflection, sure, as sort of a question mark, because
it's got a dot in front of
these guys are not, outside of like Cam Jackson, these guys are not guys that are going to be like 5th, 6th round picks. Some of these guys are actually like legitimate. TJ Sanders at 61 on the consensus big board. Norman Lott at 82. Darius Alexander is 52. These are like a lot of day 2 possibly caliber defensive tackles.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time seeing how it makes sense for the Titans to invest the day 2 pick and have legitimate interest in day 2 defensive tackles when they don't have snaps on the defensive interior to go to a player like that, unless there is a move coming. So why does it get my attention? Because it gets my attention wondering, is Jeff Simmons going to possibly be on the trade market here? Like, could he be traded in the middle of the draft? Could he be traded shortly after the draft?
Listen, there's a way to add a top 100 pick. That'll do it.
That is a way. I mean, that's why it comes to mind for me, right? Is there is a top 100 pick possibility right there. And if you're looking for a younger, cheaper replacement,
gut check, what you getting for Jeff in a trade? If you traded him before the draft, what you getting?
Before the draft, a 3.
Like,
during the draft, you can get a 2.
Okay. I think you can get more than that.
I think you can get a 2. I think right suitor, and you could find the right suitor. I think you can get a 2nd rounder.
That's roughly accurate, I think.
Not a high end 2nd rounder, but you get a mid 2nd rounder maybe. And
pick
so
48.
Like, yeah, and so that's like where I start to wonder. So I guess, Easton, what do you think about that? Is it possible that Jeffrey Simmons during the draft, the Titans are at least doing due diligence here to know that there's options if they move off of Jeff?
Well, okay, I'll ask myself a gut check on, where I'm at on that on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say. We talked about, I think it was with Austin, I talked about this in February, about a month ago. And we dismissed it out of hand, said it's not happening. Because my understanding as of late February was that Simmons was like the only guy on the roster with really any dramatic trade value to the Titans, like that made sense to potentially trade. And simultaneously, they had absolutely zero, negative 100% interest in trading him. Wasn't happening. We're not moving Jeff. That was my understanding. But things in the NFL change fast. We know this. And sometimes players standing with the team is less in the actual 100% control of a front office than they want it to be. And sometimes it's there are extenuating circumstances that kind of force their hand. And I'm not saying, to be clear, I am not hinting at knowing that that's happening. But I am saying that if Jeff were unhappy, which we've heard some rumblings of, I have no idea if it's true or not, but I've heard some things. I think we've heard Ramon Foster a couple of times on 104.5 kind of float the idea that what if Jeff wanted more money? And what if Jeff was kind of staring down the barrel of being, how old is he? 27, 28 years old now?
Jeff is born in 97, so he's about to turn 28 in July.
Okay, so he's staring down the barrel of the prime of his career. He knows he's a great player. He's
at the peak of a rebuild.
So that's the thing is he's staring down a rebuild that the Titans themselves have admittedly said, this is probably a 2 or 3 or 4 year thing to get to where we ultimately want to be. And he's probably saying to himself, man, I'm getting paid very handsomely, but is this what I want to do?
Well, and his boys are gone, right? Like, I mean,
right.
He was tight with Derek. He was tight with Danico.
Harold.
He was tight with Harold. Like, his boys are gone. The guys that he's played his entire career with, and somebody, there was a message here. Will said, Sam, this regime signed Simmons to a contract extension. They didn't. They did not. This
regime did not. Yeah.
That was a Rand
Carthon on a long-term contract.
Mike Vrabel was the head coach, and Rand Carthon was the general manager when they signed Jeffrey Simmons to a contract extension.
True.
So that had nothing to do with Brian Callahan or Mike Borgonzi. And I'm not to my knowledge, just like yours, Easton, right? I don't think this regime is unhappy with Jeff. I don't think they're looking to get rid of Jeff necessarily. I think they appreciate and acknowledge the value that he has in their defense. But as Eric says, he's also in his upper 20s. He's also he's probably getting a little bit restless. And when you need a top 100,
of course he is. Why wouldn't he be?
Right, and of course he is. And when you need draft capital, and the Titans have made it a priority to get younger, get cheaper, to try and free up as much of like a blank canvas as possible for Borgonzi, I don't think this is impossible anymore. And I think...
But how? Okay, so 1 to 10 likelihood. If we were at a 0 a month ago, which I think we were like,
I'm at a 3 or a 4. Like,
yeah, I'd say 3.
I'm tempted to, and I think that's probably what this is, right? Is like the Titans might not have had a list of 30 players that they're going to possibly draft that they need to check in on. There's a lot of guys that they probably feel confident, like Emeka Egbuka and dudes like that you're like, all right, good character guy. We don't need to bring him in. And so I think they're maybe taking the opportunity of having a few extra top 30 visits available to check in on the defensive tackles, guys that they maybe think are really talented, but they don't know much about the person. And they're just testing the waters to see what their comfort level is. If the right opportunity to move a guy like Jeff came along, what is their comfort level with replacing him with one of these other rookies? So that is where I think this comes from, but it did at least perk my ears up a little bit towards this not being impossible.
Yeah, I would, if I had, I'd say 3 is fair. I had previously turned my back to it, and now I'm just kind of like, interesting. I ask, do I think it's going to happen? I really don't. Ask me again next week. Things change fast. Right now, I still don't really have any great reason to think it's going to happen. So the last thing I'll say before we can get on to shade is, let's say that they hey, it's crystal ball. It's still true that they're not. No way in hell they're trading Jeff Simmons. Okay, so then why? Why all the interest? And to me, it is, to your point, there aren't there aren't starter snaps to give at the position, but there is just a general team building philosophy that they could be adopting that, it is advantageous for teams to, so sometimes you don't want to always upgrade your weakest link. Sometimes it's good to upgrade your strongest link to turn a strength into a dominant strength. And when you have a group that is both high-end talent at the top and high-end depth, and at a position that is a high rotation position, right? Like defensive line it's a hockey rotation type position where even when you have starters, they're not on the field 100% of the time. They can't be. Having a room that you can make a cornerstone of your build and build around can be a decent decision. Now, a lot of teams on defense do that with edge or cornerback, not interior defensive tackle. So it's an interesting decision if that's the way that they're going about it.
I just don't know, like, and again, this is obviously highly speculative, the same way a Jeff trade speculation was highly speculative. I can't justify that though, like, because I mean, it's just
define that. Are we talking like a pick at 35, right? Obviously,
no, not 35, but let's say you trade back from 35 and then you use one of your day twos. Like, you know, if you trade back from 35 and you get pick 68 and recover, like, and then you're using it on a defensive tackle, I can't justify, with the other needs that are out there, getting a guy who is like your third defensive tackle and maybe your fourth defensive tackle, right? Like maybe your fifth defensive tackle. Like you have, like you talk about a hockey rotation, you have the hockey rotation in place. You have like that sort of deal with, I mean, depth chart wise, you look at the interior of the defensive line, you have Sweat, Simmons, Coburn, Joseph Day. Like,
yeah, they're in good shape. So that's, yeah. I'll say this.
Draymond Jones can rotate inside if you really need him to. Like, I see the hockey rotation being a thing, and so it's hard for me to justify using anything.
We have one at home.
Late round pick.
I'll say of the 5 they've had in, I am significantly more interested in the Cam Jackson, Vernon Broughton tier of day 3. Oh, fine. You want to spend 5th round pick on one? I'm about it. That's perfectly fine with me. But I will have a lot of questions.
If Cam Jackson's there in the 6th, go for it, and maybe he beats out Keandre Coburn for like a spot, and he works his way into the rotation, and now you've got a younger guy that you're high on. Sure, I can get on board with that, but yeah, it is certainly a lot of due diligence on like that round 2-3 tier player, which is at least surprising on the surface. All right, let's wrap things up. Let's get to throwing shade here on a Tuesday. Shade. Let's hear that shade in the chat here. And curious to see, I heard some people saying off the rip that they got good shade today. So let us hear it, and let's wrap things up here on a Tuesday morning. Throwing Shade is brought to you by our friends over at Wilson County Hyundai. Make Wilson County Hyundai a part of your new car buying process in Lebanon, or at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. They're making all of our end of show segments happen. Easton, do you have something to throw shade at this Tuesday morning?
I'm currently racking my brain for shade. I'm going to vamp and then come up with one at the end here. Do you have one up top of your head, or are you also vamping? Because we can go to the chat and both.
I'll vamp. You go to the chat. I'll vamp.
Okay, that's fine. Let's see what the chat is saying. Jeff, Big Ten Jeff, who promised to have good shade. So let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Jeff says, shade on Colorado for retiring Sanders and Hunter's numbers this weekend. What exactly did Shitter Sanders do to warrant
did they?
Yeah, did you see that? Oh, yeah. Yesterday they announced that 12-2 are off the table, retired at the University of Colorado.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't even really know that college football teams retired numbers.
Well, the last guy to get their in the FBS, the last guy to get their number retired was Lamar Jackson at Louisville. And I think that was like after he'd won an MVP in the NFL. Like I think it was not before they were drafted.
Yeah, I mean I've seen college basketball do it a fair amount.
Right.
That's surprising. That's surprising. That
very on brand.
Knowing that the last guy to get his number retired was Lamar Jackson, I think this is a really fair shade.
Yeah,
I think this is a really.
It's kind of crazy. I would get it if it was Hunter because he's a generational prospect and he's going to be awesome. I would say you're a little bit early. Again, wait till these guys are good in the NFL. Is what I like. That's my point.
Yeah, but like Texas Tech should go retire Patrick Mahomes' jersey number.
Yeah,
at Texas Tech. Get like I think if you win a Heisman too, like you can get your number retired if you win a Heisman.
Totally.
Like Like,
So
I wouldn't
Travis could get his number retired.
Travis could get his number retired.
Colorado's never having another Heisman Trophy winner ever. Right. It's not happening.
I wouldn't have an issue with Baker Mayfield getting his number retired at Oklahoma, or or if you're a small school that has a Heisman finalist and a guy that's like super, once in a couple of decades type of guy for your program, like, all right, I'm on board with it, but we also can't just be retiring the number of our starting quarterback. Every time our starting quarterback leaves for the draft, retire his number, hang it in the rafters.
We're gonna run out of numbers. Nick says, shade on the draft being 9 days away. Can we just draft Cameron Anthony Ward already? Is his middle name Anthony? Information for life. Matthew, shade on Tennessee weather for being bipolar. It is. I walked outside yesterday and was surprised by the blast of warmth that I experienced.
I went outside without checking the weather, and I had a black hoodie on. Rip me when I got in my car. Tough. That was brutal.
That's tough. Denise says, shade on Vols fans for crying for Nico. It's not even that they're crying, it's that they're coping. And so, I mean,
that's a decent shade. I mean, I think if there is a shade, so this is not my shade, but this is my primary shade. Whenever I have to vamp for shade, I usually like to do two. Mm-hmm. I am going to shade the Iamaleava family.
Sure.
And Nico's agent as well. This is always sad to me to see this dark side of the transfer portal era. And like I'm not super in the weeds on like the portal, especially when it comes to things like college football, but I do follow college basketball portal very closely. And I've experienced, just as somebody who follows the Illinois men's basketball program very closely, the dangers of this exact thing. That one of the dangers of the transfer portal is that people believe that the grass is always greener. Mm-hmm. People allow themselves to elevate, to have a sort of like an inflated ego of how much they're actually worth or how good they actually are. And the most toxic thing of it all is when parents get involved and family gets involved. And agents are paid to do this sort of a thing for a reason, for professional athletes. How many of us grew up playing youth sports, right? How many times in youth sports did you know the kid whose dad thought he was way better than he actually was, or whose mom thought he was way better than he actually was, and he had to be batting third in the lineup, or he should be getting thrown the ball more, or the coach should be playing him more minutes? We've seen this song and dance over and over again because parents like to think their kids are pretty great all the time. And what the transfer portal has now allowed to happen is that these over controlling and ego inflated parents believe that what's best for their kid, like, you're not being treated fairly. You should get $4 million, not $3 million. Mm-hmm. You should be the superstar. I remember watching Sky Clark. A lot of people probably know the name Sky Clark as a top college basketball player, as a freshman at the University of Illinois, rotating in as like the sixth man as a true freshman on a team that had Ayo Dosunmu, one of the best players that has ever played at the University of Illinois. Dosunmu was a first-round NBA lottery pick that year, and he was the starting point guard. And people got into Sky Clark's ear and started talking about how you should be starting over Ayo. Who are they to start Ayo over you? You're the greatest. My kid's the greatest. And all of a sudden, you jump ship, and the grass isn't always greener. Sometimes staying the course is great. And Nico is just the latest example of somebody who does not have a team right now. And if you're Nico right now, you would be lucky if Josh Heupel took you back on his roster. If I'm Josh Heupel, I'm willing to punt the season and play with a worse quarterback, just to make a statement that he made about how nobody is bigger than the program.
Well, and who else is willing to do that? Josh Heupel, because he did it.
Yeah.
Not only if you are Josh Heupel, but also Josh Heupel.
You would be lucky to go back to Tennessee at this point, and everything could have been fine for Nico. Nico could have helped his own draft stock. He could have, just stayed the course and been an NFL prospect and made his millions this year at Tennessee and made the college football playoff again. but people got in his ear. And so this is like shade on that whole situation, shade on everybody. And I feel bad for Nico because a lot of times, like, he's still young. What is he, 20 years old, 19 years old? You know, like he doesn't necessarily know what's best for him all the time. And it can be difficult to have your ego inflated 24/7. So shade on everybody involved in that situation.
And man, the transfer portal, there's some brutal realities in the transfer portal. I remember when it first opened, there were multiple hundreds of scholarship athletes who entered for the first time, and just over half of them came out of the transfer portal with a scholarship. So there were like 600 players that entered the transfer portal as scholarship NCAA D1 athletes and came out of it as a walk-on or an accountant. Like that's a tough pill to swallow for these kids who are 18, 19, 20 years old. So that's a great shade. My shade, I forgot about this, and this is where I'm going to go. Garrett asked very early in the show, when are you going to talk about L'Jarius Sneed being dumb? And we know that this is news that came out on, I think, Friday via Teresa Walker at the AP, via some redacted police reports, and talking to the plaintiff's lawyer involved in apparently there was some shooting in the direction of the plaintiff at a luxury car dealership that purportedly came from the car of L'Jarius Sneed, or the car that L'Jarius Sneed was in, with unspecified other people. The plaintiff's lawyer, I don't know if you saw this, the person who, it's a civil case, not a criminal case, which that's number one, kind of like, really? This guy almost got shot and killed, but it's a civil case. He's being sued, L'Jarius Sneed is. This happened in December, by the way. So the team, it also, I had a conversation, I spoke for about an hour with Chad Brinker off to the side at the combine. And when I brought up Sneed, he seemed unusually annoyed by the topic. I was just kind of like, because everyone else I had talked to at the time was just like, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be back. Don't worry about it. And his annoyance wasn't even that he thinks he's a bad player or anything. He was just like, he didn't seem to want to talk about him. And it just like, it never quite sat right with me. And in hindsight, I was talking to Paul Kaharski about this yesterday. They already knew about it then. And I think it was kind of fresh on their minds then. So that makes a lot more sense. So this is an annoying thing for sure. But the lawyer who is bringing this civil suit was on Jared Stillman's radio show yesterday.
Oh,
and yeah,
that's a good get.
It's classic Stillman radio theater here.
I love that.
And it went bad for this lawyer. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. He said that all the stuff in the AP article, he basically just repeated all the stuff in the article, which is vague and redacted. And his two big points were basically that there wasn't evidence that they could share. There was no proof. Apparently there were threatening calls made from the Sneed camp, but they have no proof of the threatening calls, and the number was actually blocked, and the lawyer was actually hired after the threatening calls, not before the threatening calls. And he's just buying it from whoever this guy is bringing the suit. Apparently there's a pattern of behavior with Sneed. They can't point to any specifics on. It's just they think he's a bad guy. It's kind of like he's just a bad person. Was the allegation on the radio? No evidence whatsoever to be comfortable with saying that. The shooting video is from a security camera via the car dealership. They can't tell who was in the car, or who else was in the car, or if Sneed was even in the car. It's just, it seems flimsy and weird, and I'm sure something happened, and it's probably not good. But I think there's a reason why and go listen to the lawyer. He also doesn't sound like, not to make too large a generalization, he doesn't sound like the highest caliber multi-million-dollar firm lawyer. Let's put it that way. And so
a little Better Call Saul-esque. It's like,
yeah, I think this is, I think this might be if you cannot afford one, the court will appoint one to you kind of deal. And so, not that he's literally a public defender, but that's kind of the vibe. And so the combination of the quality of the lawyer and the interview, the fact that all of this is redacted in a police report, the fact that we haven't found out about it until now and it happened in December, the fact that it is a civil case, not a criminal one, despite somebody being apparently shot at and almost killed, and you're suing them for money instead of trying to take them to court to uphold the rule of law. There's a reason why we're not leading the shows with it this week, because it's kind of like, okay, I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. So my shade is on that interview.
Show me something a little bit more firm, and I'll have an opinion about it. But this, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, what do I do with that? I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Great show today. Don't forget to stay locked in. A to Z Sports, A2ZSports.com for all of our draft coverage. We're almost a week away from the NFL draft. I'll have some more written content coming out on A2ZSports.com later today. I will be with you for A to Z Sports Primetime tonight as well. Figure out what we're going to talk about there. Hopefully something happens today.
Sounds like you have a strong plan in place.
Well, not yet, but we will.
Okay.
We will be back for prime time. So come check that out. Leave a like before you go and hit subscribe as well on the YouTube channel. Till then, tighten up. We'll see you guys later.